Welcome, everybody, to Wrestling with Statistics, the only show that takes a unique perspective in the world of professional wrestling through stats and analytics. I am your host, Ryan Neitzey, and with me, as always, is the man from Pro Wrestling Musings himself, Craig Leask. Craig, how are you doing, my friend?
Yeah, I'm doing all right. I always find that hard to answer at the beginning of a podcast. It's the kind of polite thing. How are you? And you're like, good. I think yes. But yeah, how are you?
Well,
It's your turn.
it is. There is this thing about like reminding yourself how you are, because it's always gonna be the first question in any podcast. Is we want to update the audience about where we are. This is a chance for the audience to learn like more about ourselves. Are the characters that are us. And just and then and so you gotta remember to bring something. It was like, oh shit, what happened my past week that was interesting. How am I? Well, there's been better weeks in America, I guess, and that's basically been my week, is just stressing.
Yeah, I have the advantage of not currently being in America.
You have the advantage of being quarantined in Scotland, where I have the disadvantage of being quarantined while riots are happening in Atlanta. I'm fine. I should say, like, I'm like maybe 30 minutes from where riots are happening in Atlanta, but so I'm fine. I'm not like in danger or anything, and the business I work, coffee shop I work at is not in danger of getting burnt down, I guess. But yeah, besides just worldly stress, I guess I've had a good week. I don't know, like nothing. It's one of those. It's another one of those not really exciting, personally, weeks. One of those classic pandemic weeks. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think that's kind of where a lot of people are at the moment. I'm feeling a bit burnt out in general life from the quarantine. Kind of like I just like want to go somewhere different, like be it. And I know that sounds silly when there's all these things going on, but like I just want to go on a walk that I haven't been on 12 times in the last month, or like go to a restaurant, or just like I need some variety. It's all getting a bit samey, but all that's a small complaint that everybody has and then feels guilty about voicing because of X, Y, and Z that they're lucky isn't going on in their bubble at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I totally understand that. Like, the idea of like I think about it all the time. It's like, man, I miss being waited on by like a server at a restaurant. Like, I miss weirdly enough, as much as I did not like it, I miss having a conversation with my girlfriend and then it being interrupted by someone asking if I needed more water. I miss that, you know. And you and like you said, like, it's a small complaint, because really it's like, it's for the betterment of everyone else that we're not doing those things.
Oh yeah, of course.
But
Yeah,
it
yeah,
is
absolutely.
this thing of like, I'm just sort of, I'm tired of the sameness. I think everyone is. I think that's obvious. So I guess, well, you know what? What we decided. Let's break up the monotony,
Hmm.
Craig. Let's not. Let's take a break. Let's take a break from AEW this week. Let's talk about the other cool matches happening in other. I'm not going to say maybe cool promotions, but definitely like they're I don't know. But let's talk. There was a huge match that everyone talked about last week. That had a lot of people talking, obviously, and that was the hashtag Fight Pit between Matt Riddle and Timothy Thatcher. Um, we wanted to break up the monotony with AEW, and now we're talking about Riddle Thatcher. I like this match. It was obviously the first Fight Pit cage fight thing that they've ever done. Obviously, if you haven't seen it, I would highly recommend it. Basically, it was a steel cage match mixed with like a scaffold match, kind of. It was pretty cool. I don't know. What do you think of it, Craig?
Yeah, I really liked it, and yeah, the from the get go, the aesthetic was great. The cage with, as you said, the scaffolding at the top, which gave that platform that kind of, it was very different to anything you'd ever seen. Like we've had cage matches where guys end up on the top and they might be like brawling a little bit, but this was set up to give them that kind of other level that they could take the match to. And yeah, it really worked. I was really pleased that I liked this match because the last time I got excited for NXT was for Io Shirai versus Charlotte Flair, which was a really, really good match for the 7 minutes that they gave it. And then it was interrupted by Rhea Ripley. So yeah, I was really pleased with this. It was the opposite of that. It was sports feeling. There was a finish. Yeah, just very well performed, well worked stuff.
I love that you have to add the line of there was a finish. Like it's just there was an ending to it that was clear and defined.
But well, yeah, but like that's not some kind of like tribal dig. That is a ongoing concern when one watches shows produced by this particular group of people.
No, I understand that. I completely understand that. Yeah, maybe showing some bias we are. But no, yeah, I liked it a lot. I would love if it was sort of this match was sort of like an upgraded version of a steel cage match. I would love if this just replaces the steel cage in general. Obviously, I'm not sure if this match came about because, of the pandemic and that they had, the ability to pause and then they had the chance to build, the cage, I don't know, fight pit, I guess I'll say. They had a chance to build the fight pit and not like the steel cage where they lowered it. I'm not sure if you'll be able to lower the fight pit. That's a question for another day that I guess the people in the NXT will have to figure out. But like, I would love if the fight pit just replaced it because it takes the steel cage match obviously, but adding that scaffold just makes it the ability to do, I think, more different kind of offense, not just like, oh, the fear of like they're fighting in the sky or whatever, but then an easier, in a way, safer chance to do like high flying moves off the top of the cage versus just like the small beams or whatever that they had in the old steel cage. I like the fight pit. I like the fight pit a lot.
Yeah, I agree. And the steel cage in WWE is kind of done now. It's been done so like many times,
Mhm.
and it's the thing about, and I can never not mention it when talking about WWE steel cage matches, but the fact that you can open the door and like walk out has never made sense to me.
Mhm.
Like it like takes the ladder match trope where they like obviously very very slowly climb up that ladder, and but it's just a door. Like
Mhm.
you're not even going climbing up. You just have to walk out the door, and then there's the whole dramatic crawling out the door. And sometimes they ask for the door to be opened, and sometimes they don't. And the logic holes of that match for me is crazy.
Mhm.
Um, and the again comparison much, but the AEW version of the steel cage did play out an awful lot better. Removing that helped me, and making it less about escape and just about it being a steel cage match where they have to win really rather worked. So yeah, the fighting pit kind of takes that aesthetic of being caged in and the danger all around you, and the kind of the grittier elements that a cage match brings to wrestling, but without the kind of the logic holes that you feel like you're kind of insulting yourself if you choose that you're going to go along with.
Yeah, it was a good amalgamation of both the steel cage and the Hell in a Cell,
Yeah.
where it keeps the size of the steel cage, but it takes out the escapism aspect. It's literally just fight to survive. That's it. It just fight to survive in the fight pit. We'll fight around. We'll climb the cage. We'll climb up here. Kind of like a Hell in a Cell in it to a certain extent, but yeah, I think it's a really good amalgamation. I hope it continues to stay. I don't know if you had to just quickly, if you had to have another fight pit, who's in the fight pit?
So just very quickly, actually, I'm going to say something nice about WWE. So hold on to your hat.
Should we have like a ringer happening, like some sort of stinger that's like,
I think I think they do. I think they do deserve some amount of credit for coming up with a new gimmick match
yes,
that isn't contrived in like. So AEW are trying to come up with their own gimmicks, and they've tried the the kind of the battle royale, the stuttered battle royale. They've tried that ladder match. They did their diamond ring battle royale thing, and none of them have really worked. They're trying to do a blood and guts match, but that's essentially, what do you call that? A war games match.
Mm-hmm.
So you
And
know,
even then, we'll see what kind of war games match it is. Is it going to have a
yeah,
roof? Is it going to be,
absolutely. But and then WWE have come up with the Fight Pit, which is a cool sounding name. It's a steel cage match, but it's different. It felt different. It felt gritty. It felt dangerous. It felt competitive. So yeah, yeah, props to them for managing to coming up with something new at a time when people would suggest that there's nothing new to be created in wrestling other than to kind of rip off and adapt.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I agree. And two people that you want in the fight pit.
Pete Dunne springs to mind because he's got that kind of aesthetic.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Timothy Thatcher, you'd think if they were going to do another one, you'd keep him in. He fits the aesthetic really, really well.
Yeah, I would agree. Make the fight pit Thatcher's domain. Like make that
Yeah.
Undertaker was Hell in a Cell. I immediately can't think of a second second thing, but third
Shawn
thing.
Michaels ladders. Don't know.
Yeah,
Certainly the tag teams, the tag Dudleys, Hardys,
yeah,
Hardys, Edge in the Hardys especially.
yeah. Edge and the Hardys was ladders TLC sort of matches.
These tables.
Make Thatcher's domain the fight pit. If you've pissed off Thatcher enough, he wants to fight you in the fight pit. I like it. I like that idea.
Tag teams, what's his name? I was going to call him Oni Birch. Oni Larkin and Danny Birch kind of fit that kind of mold. You could also have someone like Rhea Ripley in there quite easily. She has that kind. She would be an interesting proposition in that match as well.
There's a lot of people that honestly you could run down the roster.
Who comes to mind for you?
Pete Dunne's a great pick. I do also like Birch and Lorcan. It's like you want guys that are fighty and not too flighty. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Like you just want to see, it's a fight pit. You want to see people just go in there and just rough each other up. I like Pete Dunne.
So you wouldn't put Dijakovic and Lee in. That would be the wrong.
No, I would not put Dijakovic or Lee in the fight pit. There's that you see them and you're like, yeah, let's put them. They're two big guys. Let's put them in the fight pit. But I don't, because then you're gonna talk about like they're doing like.
Well, they're going to be jumping off stuff, which turns it's less gritty and more kind of wow.
Exactly. Let's keep the grittiness of the fight pit.
Okay.
Let's keep the grittiness of the fight pit. I'm gonna do for the. We're gonna do a rematch for the United Kingdom title, Walter versus Pete Dunne in the fight pit. Put him in the fight pit.
Didn't even think of Walter. That's a great shout.
I want to see Walter go for a chop on Pete Dunne. Pete Dunne dodges out of the way. Walter chops a steel beam, and that's what Pete Dunne uses to get the victory over Walter.
Okay.
That's what I want to see. Yeah, so besides that, you put together here, Craig, sort of a rundown sheet, match stats for that fight pit, Matt Riddle versus Timothy Thatcher. What are some things that really catch your eye about this match?
Yeah, so this match is almost like proof that this is worth doing in that, so it's really, really close, 51% to 49% in favor of Matt Riddle in terms of total offense. But then the stats show a very different fighting style from each of the competitors. Riddle is laying in the strikes, 56 strikes compared to 28 from Thatcher. Thatcher, however, with more grapples, 4-2, and he went for 9 submissions with a total of 132 seconds, compared with Matt Riddle's very surprising 1 submission that only lasted 3 seconds. Matt Riddle kind of achieved an 8-second count when Thatcher was on the ground. Thatcher didn't go for any counts when Riddle was on the ground. He was obviously looking for submissions. So yeah, very different fighting styles in yet a very, very close matchup.
Yeah, the stats, what they show really is like the idea. It really exemplifies the idea of what the fight pit was about. What this match was about. It was knockout or tap out. So Matt Riddle obviously going for knockouts, Thatcher going for tap outs. I mean, no, Riddle only going for one submission is very strange compared to Thatcher's 9. Matt Riddle literally, I had to double check the math because it's numbers. Strikes. Matt Riddle 56 is literally double
Mhm.
Thatcher's 28.
Yes,
Um,
it's good maths.
Good math. Thank you. Yeah. I mean, yeah. They really went for it, it's what it shows to me is like these guys are basically on equal footing.
Mhm.
Match offense. Number of strikes. Maybe not the number of strikes. They're basically equal footing. Just when you, if you say that like one is knocking out, one is tapping out, Thatcher tapping out wins. That's what's more important. Will get you a victory, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, being the embodiment of those two ideas. Um, I
Yeah,
find
Thatcher's tap out strategy outdid Matt Riddle's knockout strategy on this occasion.
yes, I would love to see. Yeah, I would just love to see. I don't know. I'm surprised. I'm really surprised that Riddle only did one submission for 3 seconds.
Yeah,
I'm just
yeah.
looking at this. I'm like, that really is astounding to me.
Yeah, and people are familiar with seeing him using the bro mission to tap people out. He didn't use that at all in this match. I can't remember what the submission was, but it certainly wasn't that. Um, there was a break in this. They went to commercial break. I don't know if they continue wrestling during the commercials. I kind of guess that they don't. It'd be a bit pointless. So yeah, this only went 11 minutes in total. I suppose the implication is that it was a 15-minute match. We don't see 3 to 4 minutes of it because of commercials. But I mean, a lot of us have seen the footage from SmackDown where they went to commercial and the wrestlers were kind of wandering around chatting through the rest of the match. I don't think Timothy Thatcher with his bleeding mouth would have been wrestling during the break, to be quite frank.
No, yeah, I would agree with that. I think it is sort of kayfabe implied that when we cut to commercial, they're still wrestling, like they're
Yeah,
still suggesting that it's life because when we come back, they're wrestling.
yeah.
I think that's the implication. I would agree that I don't think they are. But either way, going with that kayfabe implication of it all. Yeah, no, I mean Thatcher, and yeah, it's not just the idea that they're on equal footing. You could argue that maybe Thatcher is a little bit higher than Riddle because Thatcher was very early on the match kicked so hard in the jaw that he lost a couple teeth and then wrestled the rest of the match bleeding from his gums.
Yeah,
So
and that really kind of added to it as well, the kind of gritty nature of the fight pit that we were talking about before.
yeah, one could argue that Thatcher's better than Riddle, and if Thatcher wasn't bleeding from his mouth, maybe he would have gotten more offense in. Maybe he would have just decimated Riddle even more. Maybe this match wouldn't have taken 11 minutes, but rather 8 minutes. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting.
Or conversely, Thatcher's rage of blood bleeding from
Mm.
him, just rammed him up even more. He's like a Hulk, where he gets hit and he's like, I'm gonna attack more. I don't know.
Yeah, very possible, very, very possible. So there's also the flow of the match graph that goes along with this,
Hmm.
and that's very interesting as well.
Yes.
In that, like it's dominated by Riddle to begin with. The kind of spikes in offense are the larger ones are from Riddle until you get to for like the first 5 minutes, it's Thatcher gets a little bit of offense in here or there, but
Hmm.
then Riddle will put in a string of strikes or grapples, and is in control. And then around the 5 minute mark, bleeding mouth and all, Thatcher kind of explodes, and there's a couple submission moves, a couple grapples, and a bunch of strikes, and it's easily the biggest um, kind of chunk of offense of the match. And from that point on, it's very even with one kind of Riddle rally as he kind of the bit where he throws himself off the cage and amongst a bunch of strikes.
Hmm.
And then Thatcher has to just pick his point. His opportunity would be how I would read that graph.
I would agree. Yeah, just coming back from that commercial break, Thatcher gets the upper hand. on Matt Riddle. You're just looking at that graph, just Thatcher barely doing much, and then at that 5 minute
Mhm.
mark, just all of a sudden, just getting all of his offense basically in. 30 points of offense.
Yeah, yeah,
And then what? And then like a minute later, another 6, 7 points of offense or so. Yeah, and then just just bit by bit by bit, every minute or so, just getting a little bit more wearing down. I mean, he's got 9 submissions, so he's just a little bit more wearing down Riddle, just a little bit more, until he's able to get, like you said, that opportunity to just put away Riddle. Once you get that one, it's basically in the submission game when you get that one good
yeah,
submission in, that could be it.
yeah.
It can be
And
all
yeah,
over.
and on that point with that huge spike from Thatcher, that's 21 moves that he puts together
Jesus.
in that spike, and he does 58 in total. So that's like 40% of his total offense is in that kind of explosion of aggression that he kind of puts together.
Jesus. Wow. 40%. 40% of all of his match offense happens in basically that minute.
Yeah, yeah, it'll be 2 or 3 minutes, but yeah, it's a huge. So I can tell you what happens. It's reversal, grapple, cage use, grapple, strike, strike. 25 minutes of submission. Sorry, 25 seconds of submission going into 7 seconds of another submission. Strike, 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 grapple, and then Riddle reverses the next move.
This is the kind of review that we need more of. Is just it's just
Strike, 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 grapple. It's like the worst game of, or the most violent game of Duck Duck Goose ever.
I love it. Well, I want to quickly talk about when you have a new stat in here, K juice. I just want to really quickly talk about it. Also, counts triggered. I just want to. Oh, counts triggered being the knockout. I see. Uh,
Yeah.
K juice. What do you mean by K? How do you define K juice in this match?
So there was a couple times where Timothy Thatcher essentially rammed Matt Riddle's head into the cage, so cage use. I also, so I think Matt Riddle did that once to Timothy Thatcher as well, but he also used the cage as a springboard for that kick that kind of ruined Thatcher's mouth. I counted that as a cage use as well because I didn't want to like. It didn't really seem like a dive because he's kind of just rebounding off the cage, but I don't know. It's kind of can be difficult when you're like it is quite a subjective thing for where some of these moves go into certain categories. Try
Mhm.
not to make it subjective, but it is kind of impossible to get away from at times.
There's a gray area with a lot of moves.
Yeah, a bit. Yeah. Some would say that uh, a diving foot stomp off the second rope is a dive. Some would say that you should delete your account if you think such a thing.
I think one day we just need to go into that entire story because we've been teasing it 2 weeks in a row, and I love it.
I think it needs to be left for a wee while. I,
uh,
I invited I invited MGF to join the fantasy league, but I haven't heard back.
oh, well, maybe
When I
maybe
was just
he's
like tagging lots of random people, and I was typing in somebody else's name. His name came up. I'm like, yeah, let's see.
maybe he's reading over the stats just to make sure. He wants to make a discerning idea of who he should vote for. Um,
Absolutely, yeah.
so he's very methodical in that sense. Um, Speaking of methodical, Timothy Thatcher, Matt Riddle. Good match. I really
Transition.
king of transitions over here. So yeah, this match is really good. And I think I really like the idea of this flow of offense showing like what 40%
Yeah.
in those 2 to 3 minutes for Thatcher's
The
offense.
the other the other thing you mentioned there was counts triggered. That was just when like the referee Kurt Angle starts counting to 10 when Thatcher's on the ground
Hmm.
for like the knockout count.
It's weird that that only happened once.
Yeah, yeah, it really did only happen once. Matt Riddle got 1-8 count on Tim Thatcher when he was on the ground shortly after that kick where all the teeth came out. He hit him with a big grapple
Hmm.
shortly after that.
Yeah, it's weird that where that's the case. But yeah, Kurt Angle, great referee in this match. Really good match. I really enjoyed this match. Really good job with the match stats here. Craig. I really enjoy it. I really enjoy what we're doing here. let's move on to the next idea. So the past couple weeks, Craig, you and I have been diving into AEW, going back to AEW, I should say, folks. We've been diving into AEW's sort of, how should I say it? Specific stats per wrestler, I guess.
Yeah, I call it the stuttering. I call it the kind of in-ring statistics.
Yeah,
So it's like I've been accumulating how many strikes each wrestler does in each match, or how many submission seconds each wrestler does in each match.
yeah, and we've been sort of going through each week. We did match offense versus win loss record, showing that the more match offense you get, the more likely it is that you're going to win the match. We went through strikes. We went through strike downs. Strike downs showing a very similar idea. The more strike downs you get in a match, the more likely that you're going to win. And now we are at grapples. Grapples per hour of wrestling time versus win loss record in the men's one-on-one division. Talk about this graph. Talk about the scatter plot.
So this is grapples per hour of wrestling compared with wrestlers' win-loss records, and we've used the men's division because it's got the best statistics because it's the one that's used the most. The statistics are just for one versus one traditional matches. So what I mean by that is no DQ rules matches, cage matches don't count because the way that kind of weapon use in those matches makes the statistics from them quite weighted in certain ways, and it just doesn't make sense to include those. And these statistics are also from wrestlers that have wrestled for over half an hour accumulatively. So just if only wrestlers that have wrestled for 30 minutes or more. So for example, the most noteworthy name that's not in this is Chris Jericho, who's wrestled for 20 something minutes. But at the same time, you won't be surprised to see that guys like Brandon Cutler that have just been involved in squash matches that don't last very long are also not included in this. What it does mean is that most of the wrestlers in this, except for two of them, have positive win-loss records. Well, most of them have positive win-loss records, a few with an even and two with negatives. I think this kind of shows how AEW uses jobbers and wrestlers that don't wrestle as much to kind of build up the stats of their other wrestlers. But yeah, so this graph is based around trying to find out if using grapples in a wrestling match means that you win in AEW's booking. Just to make it clear, grapples, this is kind of like grapple slams more so than grapples. Again, a lot of the way that I've labeled this comes from playing SmackDown versus Raw as a kid. So you have your strike button and your grapple button and your dive button in those games. So I think when I come to maybe reset this in the future, I might change some of the language because it can be misleading. But grapples, we're talking things like power slams, suplexes, that kind of thing. So your bigger, more impactful power moves, and seeing if AEW are booking wrestlers to use lots of them to get a victory.
Yeah, so looking at the scatter plot right now, there is what appears to be a positive correlation, but compared to our past graphs of strike downs and match offense, that positive correlation here minimal, I would argue.
Yeah, mild was the word that I used.
Yeah.
But possibly, I mean, we're kind of exploring this. I mean, it's I don't really understand the maths language around correlations, but that's like actually, I was going to say that's like a +1 correlation, but I think that's an arbitrary thing. Yeah, it looks like for every 5 grapples you use, you're like 0. You're like 10% more likely to win a match, I would say.
Oh, okay. For every 5 grapples you use, you think 10% more likely to win.
Which I think in a competitive sport, when margins, like in a competitive sport where margins are small, that would probably indicate that grapples are a way to go. This is obviously not a competitive sport, but the way that it's presented in kayfabe is it is very competitive and the margins can be tiny.
Hmm.
So I would go as far to say that this is a notable positive correlation.
Okay, we'll add it to the strike downs as notable sort of ideas, I guess. Is there anyone here that sort of comes out to you as a surprise?
As a surprise, so it's becoming a correlation in itself. But John Moxley, 11 wins in traditional 1v1, so he's obviously 12 for the year. But the no DQ with Hager doesn't count,
Hmm.
so he's up there on 11, but he's well under 15 strikes, 15 grapples per hour. He's like well into the kind of bottom 50% of grapple usage. Yet he's, best wrestler for wins. Cody, second best wrestler for wins, slightly ahead of Moxley, but again, still very much in the bottom 50% of this graph.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's there. It's a mild correlation, but we're really not seeing the wrestlers that are winning the wrestling matches. Certainly, the top two using um, powerful moves that you would think might be made to make a wrestler look strong, kind of being utilized, that kind of tactic.
Yeah, it's interesting that not just the top two. These are the champions. Moxley
Yes,
and
yes,
Cody are
absolutely.
the AEW World Champion and the TNT Championship champion, respectively. And somehow they are Moxley definitely. I would have to look back on Cody, but consistently, I would say the bottom half
Yeah.
of these sort of graphs that we've been putting together. There's one to me that would maybe suggest, well, one, there's the idea that Moxley could just be the anomaly for every single graph we do, because I feel like Moxley is just an anomaly in general.
Yeah.
But two, maybe it's suggesting to us, or maybe to me, is that there's something that Moxley and Cody are doing that is more important to them winning matches, or them getting to where they are. Does that make sense? Am I explaining myself correctly?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, essentially what we're doing here is we're trying to find what what is working for wrestlers to make them do the best and to win. This is really terrible language use here. Where we're trying to find out what are the keys to victory, essentially.
Yes.
And at the moment, we're discovering that hitting your opponent a lot with your fists isn't doing it, and hitting them with strike downs hard and using a lot of strike downs in a match seems to have a little bit of an effect.
Hmm.
And I think grapples seems to have an effect too, but at the same time, the two that are being successful, the two that we can say are being successful because they have the literal titles around their waists, aren't excelling in strikes, and they don't seem to be excelling in grapples either. So whatever they're doing to be the champions in this company and to win all of the matches, we haven't been able to pinpoint as of yet.
I'm just gonna quickly go back. I'm just gonna do a lot more editing for myself here, and you'll see it on the screen, folks. If you're watching this on YouTube, always got to plug that YouTube. If you want to see the visuals as you're listening, go to our YouTube channel, Hit the Books Pod, and that way you can see the visuals of it. Of course, you can always see that if you just follow us on Twitter and whatnot. But I'm gonna quickly go back and look at another graph just to double check. Right now on the screen, strike downs per hour versus win loss records. Moxley and Cody again, still in that same sort of bubble. Last, pack, what's the word? Back 50%.
Yeah.
Same sort of, and in the same sort of way, Moxley's above Cody in wins, but they're both still back there. Let me go all the way back to episode 1, which was offense. Moxley and Cody still, Cody with 56% average offense percentage, plus 6 win loss record at the time. I still maybe dead even, but maybe let in the back 50. Hard to gauge a little bit. But Moxley definitely in the back 50. Yeah, there's something that they are doing that is winning them titles. and
we haven't found it as
what's
of yet.
what's your theory? What do you think that they have that they are doing? Maybe it is something uncalculable. Maybe it is something that is, but we'll find out later down the line. What do you think? What's your theory that what are they doing themselves that are allowing them to get more victories
It
compared to other
might
people?
it might end up being the case that they're well rounded, as in they don't have terrible stats for anything.
Hmm.
I will be very interested to see when we come to see who actually takes lots of offense, if maybe that's something to do with it. I know for Cody, he uses a lot of finishers.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I have no idea as of yet. It might be the case that it might be the case that um, certain wrestlers are booked in certain ways, and there are very minor trends. But as to being able to point out like certain strategies that are almost formulaic in a wrestling ring, I mean, it's probably the case that that's not going to happen in other sports. Teams will be drawn towards certain trends, but they always change, and I think it's just about in other sports, it's about finding something new that works that people don't know how to deal with, or doing something that's been established to work
Hmm.
better than everybody else.
Hmm.
So we might be able to find a trend that kind of using a high energy move more sparingly is the best way to, I don't know, like use your energy. Or it might be the case that guys that do on average one dive a match, it works because you need to be able to find the time to hit that high impact move. But if you overdo it, then you're not playing the percentages well enough.
Hmm. Yeah,
Don't know. I'm scrambling for reasons here. It's kind of tricky to
it's a little too early to
um,
tell.
pull something out that sounds convincing.
No, it's a little bit too early to tell. I would agree with that. I like the theory that maybe that they're well rounded in their wrestling styles, but not just
Yeah.
also well rounded. They are efficient. Could be a word.
Do you know what doesn't seem to be coming up? The guys that you would associate with you doing a lot of high impact, risky dive moves don't seem to be picking up lots of wins.
Hmm.
Like we've got really grounded competitors, Moxley, Cody, and MJF leading the way. We've seen Archer and Brody Lee with high kind of win-loss records. Jake Hager had a really high win-loss record at one point. They don't seem to be booking. They don't. Do you know what they're not doing? They're not booking flippy guys particularly strongly, which is interesting. It's almost like they're trying to avoid doing that for what may have been said.
Good point. And if anything, that was a perfect tease into next week's show where we talk about dives per hour
No,
versus
no,
win
it's
loss record.
submissions. We're doing submissions next week.
We're doing submissions next week. I thought we were doing dives
Yeah.
next week.
No, we can do dives. I'm just being awkward.
No.
Let's let's
Let's you know what,
let's do dives.
let's skip ahead and just do taunts. Let's do taunts per hour of wrestling versus win
Once
loss record.
per.
Who taunts the most? I guess
I think it's like Archer and MJF.
that's probably accurate. Maybe that's MGF's best record. Is like he wins a lot and he has all these taunts. His taunting actually helps him win. Yeah, we'll figure out what we're doing next week. Just stay
Well,
tuned.
let's do dives. I'm intrigued by dives now.
Yeah, because I like that theory that you're right.
Yeah.
A lot of people that are winning, Moxley, Cody, MJF, Lee, Archer, Havoc, Omega,
Yeah.
aren't really dive heavy guys. People like Allen, people like Sabian, Phoenix,
Yeah.
Guevara, Trent, Janela,
But like, so
Pac.
the guys that have good win-loss records that people might insist do dives, like Kenny Omega doesn't do a lot of dives unless it's like a huge match.
Hmm.
Darby Allin doesn't do as many as people expect. He does them sparingly, about 2 or 3 per match.
Hmm.
Kip Sabian sometimes does a bit more, but generally he's working heel, so again, doesn't always do a huge amount.
Hmm.
Your big divers, if you want to call it that, Sammy Guevara, Phoenix, even Orange Cassidy, Joey Janela, Pac sometimes, are further down the win-loss records. So yeah, kind of sounds like AEW is not all elite flippy guys wrestling.
Which is why Flip Gordon went back to Ring of Honor. He's not
Yeah,
gonna win in this promotion. Okay, I like it. I like that idea. We'll be back next week for dives per hour. Let's see, because I mean the theory, the idea would be that there would be some sort of negative correlation, right? That the
possibly.
more dives you do, the less likely you'll win.
Hmm.
I guess we'll find.
Possibly, or it might just be that it's minimal and doesn't make a difference.
That's true. That's true. We'll find out, I guess, next week, folks. So if you want to get ready for that, I highly recommend subscribing to this feed wherever you listen to podcasts, and that way you can make sure to get that show next week, next Monday. And if you want to follow us even more, you can always follow us on Twitter, of course. You can follow me at HitTheBooksPod on Twitter. We are coming out this Friday. I guess this will be the teaser, I guess. This Friday, we'll have our website live and running, finally, after putting it together forever. We'll have our website back and running for our Hit the Books podcast. If you want to listen to me more, obviously you can go listen to Hit the Books. It's also on this podcast feed, so if you subscribe, you also will get that show on Friday. That's a weekly SmackDown versus Raw fantasy booking show. Basically, we have our own rosters, and we're basically trying to make the best show, and that you can then vote on who won. And I've lost 2 weeks in a row now, Craig, and I'm not happy about it. I've been trying to take a lot of. I have a whole storyline where I have the Fiend versus Roman Reigns, and I've been losing, and I wonder if that's the problem. I'm scared.
Baron Corbin, by the sounds of it, that is the winning formula.
I do have Corbin on my roster, and he is not nowhere close to the Universal or WWE Championship, I should say. So maybe that's the issue. I need more Corbin in my life. But of course, you can get all that stuff more, and we'll have a website up and running on Friday where you can backlog and research all the former cards and everything, so you can just read it instead of listening everything. Obviously, we'd appreciate if you listen to it, but we'll have that all there for you. Craig, what do you need to plug?
Yeah, you can see my Twitter stuff, Craig PW Musings. If you just want to see the stats without me kind of talking about it in general, there's a separate PW Musings Twitter account trying to differentiate the two. ProWrestlingMusings.com to kind of see all the columns with the kind of weekly AEW leaderboards and breakdowns and match stats and all there for you.
Do you want to plug this new special thing that you were doing?
Yes, the new special thing. Yes. So I've just started up a fantasy wrestling league. Yes, there are others out there. Wrestle Talk do a very good one. However, this one is slightly different. The Pro Wrestling Musings version. So you predict who wins each match, but you also predict who you think is going to be booked strongest in the match via taking the most of the match offense. So it's a bit of a who will win, who do you think is going to get the most offense in? And then each week there will be 2 or 3 kind of whole card questions. For example, this week, some of the, I can't remember. There was who will get the highest match percentage on the whole card, who will use the most dives, and who will use the most submission seconds in total on the card.
Yes, you can go, if you want to be a beta tester, is what you're calling it, you can always go to at PW Musings. There's a tweet there where you can vote. It says new wrestling fantasy league. I already put my vote in, and obviously we'll return next week. It'll be revealed that I'm the ultimate winner. So that, that's fine. Maybe it's, maybe I have the access to the knowledge. I have access to the stats, but so does everybody else. So, maybe I'm just better than you, MJF style.
Well, you might want to hold on before self-promoting quite so highly until you've maybe got a week or 2 under your belt.
Well, I don't know what you're talking about. Screw trends. I'm all about if I win week number 1, then I'm done. I'm the winner. I don't have to play anyone.
I was more suggesting that it, might not go as well as one might hope.
Oh, I mean, we'll find out now, wouldn't we, Craig? Thank you everybody for listening to this week's episode of Wrestling Statistics. Thank you everybody so much. Obviously, stay safe out there. We love you all out there, and have a good week. Yes, stay safe, everybody. Bye.